Welcome everyone to the second round of the UZchess Cup 2025. We have Vokhidov Shamsiddin on our screen. He starts the clock here, and Shamsiddin is one of the top players of Uzbekistan. And Pragg enters here, shakes his hands. Shamsiddin was part of the Uzbekistan gold medal winning team in 2022 at the Chennai Olympiad. Praggnanandhaa has been in tremendous form of late. I'm very excited for this battle. In the first round, Pragg drew his game against Arvind Chidambaram, while Shamsiddin Vokhidov lost his game to Nodirbek Abdusattorov. Let's see how this game pans out. Pragg adjusts his pieces. He comes a bit late to the game. Look at how Pragg just gets into the zone and opens the game with 1c4. We have the English opening that Pragg has gone for. And let's see what Shamsiddin does. He brings his knight out to f6 and he also adjusts all his pieces before pressing the clock. And now presses it. Pragg. What will be his move here? Knight c3 is the most common move in this position and he plays it. Knight comes out to c3 and Shamsiddin goes e5. So we have the main line in English with e5. g3 played here by Pragg. He wants to get his bishop out to g2 on the long diagonal. d5 is a very common way to play, but he goes bishop b4 and a very interesting move here. Sometimes you just want to give up your bishop for the knight and double your opponent's pawns and just have harmony with the remaining black pieces. And look at this move, e4 by Pragg. Very nice move, very interesting move. And d6 instantly played by Vokhidov. Note that after taking and knight e4, there is queen d5 and you recover the pawn. So he goes d6, d3 by Pragg, now saving the pawn, creating this triangular setup, also known as the Botvinnik's triangle. You do weaken your d4 square where a black knight can sit, but you will be protecting this square with knight on e2. h3 played here by Pragg, a very useful move to stop any of the black pieces coming to g4. So you can go bishop g2, knight e2 and short castle. a6 played here by Shamsiddin, and the idea is to strike with b5, rook b8 or directly b5, and that's a very interesting idea because of all the breaks you might not be imagining black to go for this, but when you play b5 you make your bishop active on this diagonal, you can get your rook activated here. So very nice move and actually something definitely to learn from. Also, if Pragg takes here, it reduces his control over the d5 square. So Pragg ignores it, plays bishop g2 and rook b8 played by Shamsiddin. 1 hour 12 minutes for him. Pragg has been quick with his opening moves, so could be very well his preparation. Short castles, and now the bishop comes back to c5, looking at this very important square and an important diagonal, also opening up his rook on the b file. Rook comes to b1, and I think an important move, just so that later on he can open up his bishop, and if you take, the b2 pawn will no longer be hanging. Shamsiddin now castles it out here. A very typical idea for white in such positions is to go for the f4 break, but you can see that right now the f pawn is pinned. So king h2 comes to mind as a very natural and strong move. Yes, he plays his king to h2, and Pragg is hoping to open up the position with f4. Let's see what Shamsiddin does now. He plays his pawn to h6, and well, for Pragg, it's time to open up the position with f4. The rook would get activated, the bishop would open up. Seems like a good idea. And he goes for it. f4 by Pragg. The game is getting heated up. The position very balanced for the time being. And Shamsiddin takes on c4. It's also possible that Black does not react in any way to Praggnanandhaa's pawn push to f4. For example, if he takes, he'll take back. h6 ensures that there is no bishop g5 coming later. And the knight jumps into d4. Will Pragg actually push his pawn to f5? Because in a way it does gain space. He does it. He pushes his pawn to f5. And with the idea of g4, g5, maybe h4. But on the other hand, now Black has a free role in the center or on the queen side, because there's no tension in the center. a5 played by Shamsiddin, a great move. His idea could very well be bishop a6, putting pressure on c4. And Pragg goes on the king side. Pragg is following a very simple strategy. I'm coming at your king, Shamsiddin. The king on g8 is what I want. And now he goes bishop a6. Excellent move by Black. You can see how Black is maintaining the pressure. c4 is hanging, b3, and now an important moment here. I would say a4 is an excellent move. Because if you take, you spoil your structure, c4 hangs, and if you take here, I have bishop c4, there's a pin. Unfortunately, he doesn't go for it, he goes c6. Maybe next move a4. Meanwhile, Praggnanandhaa is like, well, Shamsiddin, if you are not going to do anything on the queen side, my plan is pretty simple. g5, take, and knight jumping to h5, really pinning you up. Knight to h7 played here by Shamsiddin. He wants to maybe play f6, and in general, just stopping g5 move. Praggnanandhaa goes knight h5 with the idea of f6 break. Also, if here the knight is very nicely positioned, but a4, let's go for it. He goes g6, and Shamsiddin plays this pawn to g6, and Pragg is, quite surprised. He stops in his tracks here, thinks for close to 13 minutes, and sacrifices his piece. He goes bishop h6, and Praggnanandhaa's point here is that take my knight, which he does, and now there's a very important move here, which begins with g5. And this is something which Shamsiddin could have missed. It's a very strong move. f6 does not work, because f6 there's knight f6, bishop g5, knight g4, and the queen takes the bishop. But g5 is very powerful because it opens up the queen's path. Finds it. g5 on the board. Fantastic move. And after knight takes g5, queen h5 is just killing. It's just very strong. So he plays king h8 very quickly. It feels like Shamsiddin has seen all of this. But now queen h5. Pragg takes the pawn. And his threat is just take on f8, push g6, so rook g8 played with the idea of maybe taking here on g5. But now white has a very strong move, g6. But you can see Shamsiddin gets up from the chair. He's looking confident. But Pragg believes in himself. He believes in his calculations. It's for a reason that he's world number 6. Takes on g6. And now f takes g6. Rook b7. Fantastic move, by the way. If you take here, black is already better. Look at his pieces. Beautifully positioned. Pragg finds the most amazing move in the position. Rook f7. Attacking here. Also the rook. And this might be the move that Shamsiddin could have underestimated. He takes on f7. Now pawn takes on f7. And you can see that this bishop on a6, which looked promising on this diagonal, is now completely out of play. Rook g7 played. Taking on g7 here seems possible, but for the time being, rook f1 is an excellent move. Threatening f8, a very powerful move. So queen f8, blocking the pawn, and Pragg needs to find a way to break through. Not super simple here. Praggnanandhaa calculating there. He takes on g7. He knows that he's winning here. Queen takes g7, f8 queen just wins the game. So king takes is forced. And now you want your rook to come to the g file. So h4 is an incredible move. The idea is bishop h3 and then rook g1 with rook g8 with a killing blow. He goes bishop c8 here, trying to get the bishop on this diagonal. And Pragg plays his bishop to h3. A great move. And now rook g1 is coming up next. Pragg has also timed his play so well. He has 14 minutes on the clock. And yeah, in general, Pragg is becoming such a monster at classical chess. Rook g1 check. If you go king h8, there is simply rook g8 check where you lose the queen. So king f6 played. And now king takes h3 is possible. You can take this. But rook g8, a very powerful blow. Now queen can take on f7, which is the natural move. Otherwise you lose the queen. But there is a very important move that white has, which is queen h6 check. The king has to go to e7 and then rook g7, winning the queen. And what is very important here to note is that after king e7, rook g7, by the way, he plays here, either you lose the h7 knight or the h3 bishop. So black will have only 2 minor pieces for the queen, and which is insufficient. And white also has the h passer. The rook on g7 pins the queen. Pragg drinks his bottle of water as he usually does when he's in a winning position. And it's a sign that Shamsiddin can lay down the arms. There he is, resigns. Praggnanandhaa wins a very important victory for him. With this win, he joins the leaders in this tournament with 1.5 on 2. But more importantly, he gains rating points, becoming world number 5 and India number 2. He also surpasses Gukesh. For now, Arjun is India number 1 with 2780. Pragg has 2777. And Gukesh is world number 6 with 2776. An amazing result for the youngster who's gunning for victory in this tournament.